Hey you guys, Mark Daniels Jr. I just wrapped up my first FLW Tour event here on Lake Toho in Kissimmee, Florida. And man, all I can say has been an amazing week. I started out kind of rusty a little bit. I had 13 pounds, sitting in 37th place, which was actually not a bad bag considering, I mean, fishing was really, really tough. I had a really horrible practice, like a lot of the guys mentioned as well, and kind of turned it around in the tournament. Day 2, I caught 18 pounds. And man, that catapulted me all the way up into 15th place, gave me a shot to fish. Day 3, another crack at it, went back out again, caught another 17-pound bag, which put me in 7th place, top 10 cut on my first FLW Tour event this year. So I'm really happy to say that. And so I'm gonna do a little recap like I always do and give you guys a little insight on what I was doing and where I was fishing. So first of all, I was fishing predominantly on Lake Kissimmee. This place is a huge chain of lakes. They call it the Kissimmee chain of lakes. You got Toho, then you lock through Toho, and then you enter a lake called Cypress. Then you run down a canal, then you enter a lake called Hatchinaha. Then you run down a canal, and then you come into Kissimmee. And that's where I chose to fish most of the time. I had one other small spot in Lake Hatchinaha that I started on day 1, and I caught a big one right there, about a 7-pounder. And that was the only fish I caught in Hatchinaha. Everything else came from Kissimmee. And let's talk techniques a little bit as what I was doing. I was fishing an area in Kissimmee known as North Cove, a really popular area. That's where Brett Hite won it back in 2008. And I got in there and I was using a search bait. And down here in Florida, you guys, this is something that's a must-have here in Florida. And it's nothing special, it's nothing secret, everybody knows it. It's called a speed worm. Zoom makes it, and this just happens to be the big one, the mag speed worm. And I used this as a search bait, and I would just fan cast this in these spawning areas looking for them. And when you found them, they would be grouped up. And so this was a great search bait, and I caught a lot of good fish on this on day 2. Most of my 18-pound bag came on this. I'm throwing this on 20-pound Seaguar Tatsu. This is a 7'4" Kistler Helium 3 rod, 7-to-1 gear ratio reel, and I'm just slow rolling that thing, ticking the hydrilla. And they come and hit it just like a crankbait. Just like a crankbait. You slow roll and all of a sudden, thump, wait for it. That's why I'm throwing the medium heavy rod. Let that tip load up, then boom, you can jack them in the boat. So this was a great tool for me. I use it as a search bait, and it helped me out a lot this week. Once I found those fish with that speed worm, then I would slow down and I would start pitching a Cinco style bait around the lily pads and in the holes in the hydrilla, which I'm using, you know, you gotta have a good pair of polarized glasses. I'm using Hobie polarized glasses. I can see these holes in the hydrilla, and that's what I'm looking for, and I'm pitching this around. Same with the pads, and they're spawning in those areas. And so here's your Cinco style bait. I got an Eco Pro tungsten weight on here. This one's a 1/4 ounce, and I'm just dragging this through those areas. And it's important to have a really good hard tungsten weight, because you can feel it when you're on a bed. Just by dragging it along that hard bottom, you can feel it with that tungsten weight ticking, tick, 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 and then you know, okay, there's probably a bed there. And so what I would do, instead of working that bait, I would sit there and I would just pulsate my rod tip, just like this, and that bait would just be twitching. And the next thing you know, your line's swimming, and boom, you can jack them. This one here, I beefed it up a little bit because I want to get those fish out of that hydrilla in a hurry. So I'm still throwing 20-pound Seaguar Tatsu on this, but I'm using a 7'6" Kistler Helium 3 heavy action rod here. A little more power. I can move those fish out of those holes, out of that hydrilla, out of those pads, and get them in a boat. So this is very useful and helpful as well. Man, the weather was all over the place this week. And anybody that knows anything about Florida, I've learned really quick, this is on my 2nd trip down to Florida fishing tournaments, but what I've learned is that these fish are extremely sensitive to weather change. Day 3, the night lows went from 74 all the way down to 53. When I woke up in the morning, I had to put my full bibs and jacket on and hoodie sweatshirt. It was that cold. So I knew that was gonna affect the bite, but I didn't really know how. So I got back in that same area and I'm throwing that speed worm and I'm throwing my lockjaw jig, swim jig around that I have been catching fish on. And I'm trying to find them, and I'm not finding them. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And then it dawned on me. They didn't hunker down in that matted hydrilla. There was isolated small matted hydrilla patches. And so I resorted to my favorite technique, and that's punching mats. And this is Missile Baits Missile Crawl. Once again, man, this thing has came to my rescue in my last top 2 finishes both times. I love this bait. extremely slender profile. It doesn't hang up. It doesn't have any extra appendages on it. It slides right in, and it has a super sleek crawfish look to it. And they were hitting this thing pretty much on the fall. It hit the bottom, and they would be sitting right down in the thickest part of that mat, just hunkering down, weathering that cold weather, and thunk, they would bite it, and I would jack them. And this is on a 1.5 ounce Eco Pro tungsten weight. This is 65-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid. This is a prototype rod that I'm working on with Kistler rods right now, but it's a 7'11" heavy action, helium 3. And again, high speed ratio reel is critical when you're punching mats like that. You want to hit them 2-3 turns of that handle. They need to be out of there. Otherwise, you're going to get hung up and you're going to lose that big fish. And so this little dude right here absolutely saved the day. And so I definitely got to give a huge shout out, to Missile Baits, man. I can't leave home without these. These are always going to be in my box. And of course, power pole, man. I'm sitting here talking to you guys on power pole down, and it's actually not that windy right now, but on day 2, it blew pretty good. And so there's no way that I can get in there and flip these matted hydrillas or make that perfect pitch into that hole in that pocket where I think that fish is spawning, or into those pads, without power poling down, being quiet. I'm not on the trolling motor. I'm not cutting up a bunch of grass, making a whole bunch of ruckus. Those fish are sensitive to that. So I would get in there, I would power pole down, nice and stealthy and quiet, pitch those pockets, get bit or not, and move on. And that was key for me this week. So once again, I want to give a huge thanks to Power Pole. One last thing, guys, be sure to follow me on social media at Facebook at Mark Daniels Jr., on Instagram at Mark Daniels Jr., and on Twitter at MDJ Fishing. And you better be watching Circuit Breaker this year, 2015. It's going to be an awesome show. That's going to be airing on FLW.com, and it's also going to be on YouTube. Stay tuned. I'll catch you guys at Lewis Smith Lake. Hopefully, I'll be looking at another top 10 finish, and I'm going to be trying to get some more big ones. Y'all take it easy. I'll see you on the water.